What's going on, everyone? My name is 94 Wolfie, and in this video I'm going to show you how to mix your beats using stock plugins inside FL Studio. I'll be giving away the mixing template in this video, so make sure to watch until the end to find out how you can download that for free. I don't really like to use MIDI. I just exported this down, and all I did to do that, if I wanted to do it on these 808s, come over here, right click, come down to consolidate, and then hit from song start, then hit start, then it'll export our 808. After we have everything we want printed, now we're just looking for everything to be roughly the same volume. Everything seems to be hitting right at around -10, -11. Do the same for my 808s. And I'm just turning down the master that way. One, I could hear it. Two, I could see where it's hitting. Those are looking good as well. Now what I want to do is assign all three of these tracks to a mixer channel. Right click, go to track mode, audio track, insert one. Do that for the 808, audio track, insert two. Then we'll just open up our channel rack. Just gonna highlight these, hit Control L. Once we have everything assigned to its own mixer channel, I like to keep my kick right next to my 808. All you have to do is tap on this, hold down shift, and then scroll up or down on your mouse. Now what I'm gonna do before we get into mixing everything is I'm just gonna focus on the sounds, and I'm gonna pan everything to where I want it to sit within the mix. These are all pretty loud, so I'm gonna grab them, turn them down. All I did there was I put the 808 in mono. I did the same for the kick. And then I panned my two hi-hats slightly to the left and to the right. And I'm gonna keep my snare right in the middle. We're gonna be doing the mix by meters method. We're gonna open up our kick and we're gonna adjust the volume until the kick hits about -5. Doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer we can get it, the better. We're gonna go into our snare and do the same thing. -5. And we want our hi-hats to sit at -20. The other one I have on 6. I don't have any cymbals in this, but if I did, those would go to -20 and your percussions would hit at -25. Now let's move on to the 808s or your bass. Your bass, you want it to hit at about -10. And that sounded good there. Now guitars you would want to do to -20, and your keys you would want to do to -20 as well. And if you had a clap, your clap would just be to -15. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to let my sample play and I'm going to adjust it till it hits right around -20. This is what we have. After we have everything leveled inside of the instruments, I want to start off with my kick and my 808. I'm just going to play these together. This sounded pretty good. I think we can clean up that kick. So let's pull up a Fruity Parametric EQ2. We're going to right click here, go to type. We're going to go to high pass and go to order. We're going to do steep 8 or 6. We'll play around with it first and see how it sounds. So that sounded good. It's already given it a little bit more energy, a little bit more presence. We're going to go into the 808 and do the same thing, except this time we're going to make it a steep 8 with a high pass. We're going to bring it out to about -30. What this is doing is cutting out everything from 30 hertz and under. A lot of people say you can't even hear it. I can, and it's just a good practice to remove it. Again, mixing is all about creating space for instruments to sit. That way they work well together in a mix. Boosting my kick with that EQ made it jump up in volume quite a bit. So we're gonna open this back up and we're gonna turn it back down. Aiming for -5. Now I'm gonna bring in my two hi-hats. Those are sounding good. Bring in the snare. I like the way this snare sounds. It's got a little too much low for me. So I'm going to turn this on so you guys can see it. Come down here, hit enabled, and you'll be able to see the frequencies. Grab this, drag it up, bring it down, slide it over, and then I use this to kind of push it down a little bit more. That sounds pretty good. You could hear that it did take out a lot of that low end, but it still has the same effect the original snare has. I'm just controlling the frequencies a little bit better. I'm going to do the same on the hi-hats. Because they are high pitched, I'm going to do 4 dots. Now again, when we use the EQ on the kicks and the 808 to kind of boost the thing, so we actually have to go back in here and just recontrol everything. Open up the snare. Snares have to be set to what? -5. Bring it down. We're also going to look at our hi-hats. Those should be hitting at -20. I'm going to bring them up. That is good there. Just by panning, setting the mixes perfectly, and using EQs, everything sounds better and it sounds like it's sitting in its own spot, which is exactly what you want before you really start adding too many plugins. All right, now let's bring in our sample. There's a lot of low information happening on that sample as well. This is just to show you guys what all the information down here is. Go to order, steep 8, high pass, scroll down on my mouse. The 808 is living in the 30 hertz spectrum. We want this to come out actually. Let's bring it out to 50. Now I'm going to add in a couple effects on my drums. One of the things I like to do on my hi-hats is add in this fruity panomatic. Even though I already panned this will get in there and automate it and change it from left to right quickly throughout the song. That way it just adds a little bit more ear candy for the listener. I went over how to use this plugin in my drum patterns tutorial, but if you have not seen that yet, I will link it up above for you. If you have seen it, you know what we're doing here. Now on this other hi-hat, I'm actually going to use this fruity distortion. Just going to toggle over. And then on my snare, I'm going to add in another fruity fast distortion. Brought the volume of my snare down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is come in here and I'm just going to raise it. Now I'm going to look for some type of filter for the sample. I'll just keep the settings at that. And what it's doing is kind of controlling that low and the highs a little bit more. This is what it sounds like without the plugin. And this is with. All right, now let's get into the fun part, which is routing. Create a melody bus, turn this pink, and then we're gonna create a drum bus. That'll be for our kick and our 808. Drum bus number 2. That'll have our snare and our hi-hat on it. From here, if you right click, come down, go dock 2, hit right. Our sample, we want to declick it from the master. Same thing for everything else. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to route my 808 to the black drum bus, do my kick to this drum bus as well. So what this means is the 808 and the kick are getting pushed into this drum bus and then sent out to the master. Do the same for our sample. I'm just going to push over to the melody bus. It's going to push out to there. And then our drum 2 is where our hi-hat and our snares are going to sit. So when we turn all these on, nothing will play because everything's controlled over here. I want to come in and attack the drums first. So I'm going to work with the kick and the 808. So I'm going to load up this fruity limiter, come over here, select my kick. Now, even though they sound perfect together and they're not really clashing, I like to do this just as an extra step to make sure. So I'm just going to bring my threshold down. When you load this up, everything will look like this. You just want to set your threshold, set my ratio. I set this to a 4:1. And then if it's still sounding a little too loose at the end, a little too muddy, what you can do is bring this release and just turn it down a little. Sounding pretty good. Come over to limit, and I like to drop my saturation right over the peaks. Now, one of the other things you could do on my drum bus, I should have done this first, but what I'm going to do is bring this 30 to 18K hertz on. Next up, I'm going to load up this wave shaper. I'm going to right click. Then from there, I'm going to load in the fruity compressor. Now, without the fruity compressor on, I'm hitting at -6. So what I'm going to do is set my threshold down to about -12 to -15. I'm going to set my ratio to about a 4:1. Now again, when you're using the compressor, it's always best to toggle on and off. That way you can match the actual sound of the original sample itself. I'm going to keep that at about a 0.7 gain. Then I'm going to bring in one more parametric EQ2. And I'm just going to do a steep 8, type, high pass, scroll down. I'm going to bring this right out to about 30. Next up, we're going to move into the hi-hats and the claps. So as you can see, even though we controlled a lot of the snare and the hi-hat low end earlier on, it's still present in this EQ. So we're just going to do the same thing. Also going to do the same thing down here, but I'm going to go to low pass, steep 8, scroll down on my mouse. I'm going to bring it right out to about 16.5. Let's load up the infamous sound goodizer and see what we can get out of this guy. Now, because that snare is a little too high pitched, I'm going to go back into the instrument and then just kind of dial that back. Last but not least, we're going to move on to our melody bus. Let's just load up an EQ. Bring this out to 16. I'm going to load up this Fruity Love filter. Okay, so I like the way this sounds, but I don't like the way it sounds on this itself. So I'm just going to create a copy of the sample. And then from here, we're actually going to click here. So my sample is going to go into the melody bus out to the master, but I'm also going to create this little copy using this Fruity Love filter. So I'm just going to grab, drag and drop it in, come back over to my melody bus, take it off. And it gives us this really cool sounding effect. I'm just going to bring this down, put an EQ over it, kind of control it a little better. Then on the copy of this, I'm going to pull up another Fruity compressor because this sound is very low already. It's in between -33, -27. I'm just going to bring this down to 34 and give it a 3-to-1. I'm going to make my attack super slow and the release super fast. I'm going to turn this to a soft type and I just moved it up 0.6 there. Now on my melody bus, I am going to put on another sound goodizer. After we add in our sound goodizer, we're going to throw in another Fruity compressor on this guy. Now, at the end of this section on my beat, it comes in. It's supposed to have a delay effect there, so I'm going to come in, go over to my melody bus. We're going to load up a delay. So that's obviously a little bit too much delay to have on throughout the entire beat, but what we can do is create automation clip. So I'm just going to right click, create automation clip, and it's going to bring in this delay effect right here. So I want the effect to take place here and go into here, bring that up a touch, make a couple points like this, bring this point over like this, and then I'm going to come to the very end, drag this all the way down, same thing over here, do the same at the end right there. Now, after you've done all that, one of the things we're going to do in the master channel, you can see I have a couple of these plugins loaded up already. I'm just going to walk you through them. I'm going to set my threshold on this guy, about -4.5, do a 3-to-1, bring the attack up, bring the release up slightly. I'm going to keep this at soft. Next up is this EQ UO. It is a graphic EQ. This is kind of confusing, but when you click this, you'll be able to move these bands. But if you have them all unclicked, it moves everything. So what I suggest doing is just turn them off until you're ready to work with them. Turn it on, move one at a time, lock it in place, turn this one on, lock it in place. After doing that EQ, we're going to come into here. We're going to look at our lows. You want this to be up. You don't want it too high. You don't want it too low, but roughly right around there. And I kind of just do this to all of them. Fruity stereo shaper. I have 2 of these because with one, but when I add in this other one, it evens it out. And then the last thing I have on here is a Fruity soft clipper. I just have the threshold set to -2.5. The gain's at about 80. By doing all of that, we could take a beat that sounds like this. To this. There's an easy way to start mixing your beats in FL Studio using nothing but stock plugins. All right, that's gonna be all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and drop a comment. Let me know what you would like to learn next. And if you haven't yet, smack that subscribe button and hit the bell so you get notified every time I put out a new video. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is 94 Wolfie, and I'll see you in the next one.